Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that when we examine the sequel trilogy, there's a lot of problems that lie within The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Of course, The Rise of Skywalker has some quality moments in there, but overall, it seems like a lot of fans are still very upset with how the sequel trilogy actually wrapped up. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one thing that we do know about Disney and Lucasfilm is that they are currently planning their new Star Wars universe that's going to consist of movies, TV shows, books, comics, novels, video games, and so on and so forth. That's all going to wrap together, and it's really going to be modeled after the MCU. Now, one thing about Star Wars is, of course, director and writer Rian Johnson of The Last Jedi is definitely responsible for the divide between fans from The Last Jedi and exactly what happened with that movie. And when you examine the character of Luke Skywalker, right, a lot of fans had issues with exactly how that character was portrayed by Rian Johnson and how he wanted Mark Hamill to project the character in a specific way on the big screen. So, of course, Kathleen Kennedy had a large role in initiating many of the ideas by Rian Johnson, approving many of his ideas for this Star Wars film that really served as the middle point between episodes 7 and 9. So, what's really intriguing all has to do with Kathleen Kennedy's take on Rian Johnson and how the fans perceive Rian Johnson and his work on The Last Jedi, and it's quite something because it definitely shows that Kathleen Kennedy is really not all there when it comes to being the head of Lucasfilm. Now, with that being said, now that both Disney and Lucasfilm are finished with The Rise of Skywalker, they are focused on the new Star Wars universe, as well as their new Star Wars trilogy of films, where it's noted that they are coming up with a plan to reunite the Star Wars fans, after many had issues with the sequel trilogy films and that Kathleen Kennedy is no longer in control over creative decisions. However, during and after the premiere of Episode 9, many interviews were given to Kathleen Kennedy when she was being questioned about the sequel trilogy in general. When questioned about the backlash from The Last Jedi and Rian Johnson's effect on the Star Wars community, Kathleen Kennedy stated that Rian Johnson did not ruin anything with the Star Wars franchise, and that he did a brilliant job with creating a bridge between episodes 7 and 9, and that Kathleen stated that there was actually no backlash for the film, and that it was actually just a minority of fans who had problems with some of the creative choices between Rian and others on board with the movie. Kathleen Kennedy also states that The Last Jedi was one of the most impressive experiences for a production of a film that she has worked on, and that Rian Johnson did a great job by introducing the story of Luke Skywalker in his mature life. Kennedy also says that she realizes that the fans have had problems with Rian's work and believes that they are wrong with how Rian Johnson actually approached Star Wars, and that it may take some years for the fans to realize the outstanding piece of work that he actually developed for the Star Wars brand. When questioned about Rian Johnson's new trilogy, however, Kathleen Kennedy was unable to provide an answer on where that currently stands. So, Kathleen Kennedy, like I say, this is a major flaw, at least in my opinion, the fact that she denies the backlash of The Last Jedi, and that she denies the fact that the fans have issues with Rian Johnson's work and how it's going to take some years for them to realize his fantastic piece of art in the Star Wars brand. Now, when you look at Rian Johnson, obviously he had a lot of ideas thrown in there that really did a disservice to the character of Luke Skywalker and to some of the Jedi lore, as well as some of the Force lore thrown into the mix. You can actually learn a little bit more about all of this in the visual dictionary of The Last Jedi and how it kind of interferes with some of the canon material of the Star Wars universe. But when we examine Kathleen Kennedy's take on Rian Johnson, right? I know a lot of you out there are going to agree with me on this, but some of you out there may very well disagree with me on this, is that, well, The Last Jedi was a film that really did a disservice to the Star Wars lore and to the character of Luke Skywalker. There's no doubt about that. And for those of you that disagree with me on this, that's perfectly fine. You all have your own opinions. That's part of being human. It's perfectly normal. But when you look at everything related to the Star Wars community, you cannot deny that there are millions upon millions of fans that are very much upset with how Rian Johnson approached The Last Jedi, and how Kathleen Kennedy just does not seem to want to really confirm that there was backlash, and that it's just a minority of fans, a small chunk of Star Wars fans, per se, on the internet, that are just shouting out into the void. That's how Kathleen Kennedy sees it. So, when we look at The Last Jedi, I myself, I know nobody in person that enjoyed the movie, both casual fans, hardcore fans, and non-Star Wars fans, all of which that I personally know, did not enjoy the movie. And that's just on my own personal note here. I don't know if you guys are the same, but when we look at Rian Johnson's work, she could not still answer about where his new trilogy stands. Again, I think that this is yet another big hint that Kathleen Kennedy's kind of covering things up and doesn't want to necessarily tell the truth of how Disney and Lucasfilm see Rian Johnson. We talked about how they had major regrets of hiring Rian Johnson, just yesterday, and how that kind of had a major impact on Star Wars lore and future projects, etc. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.